And we are back here on the Northland Sports page. Brian Prudhomme, Dave Cook, a little welcome to the jungle, a little GNR, Guns N' Roses, for those that aren't familiar with the initials game, so to speak, as we talk to an initials game contestant here very shortly. But Dave Cook, you've got something to say. Go ahead.
Well, let's start with, did you know that song is the song that people started to notice the ridiculous range that Axl Rose had?
Right.
His range is somewhere in the area of, if I remember right, they were talking about Axl Rose and Mariah Carey. Like, that guy can go top, well, not anymore, but at the height of his fame, he could climb the register pretty fast. Let's talk about our sponsors, Brian. Let's start with Ferguson Bath and Kitchen, the Blackwoods Group, including their locations on London Road, Tavern on the Hill, Two Harbors in Proctor, Mount Royal Bottle Shop, Krause Heating and Cooling, your Carrier HVAC authorized dealer. Assisted Living Locators, you can reach them at www.assistedlivinglocators.org/Duluth. Mike Regan at Christensen Group Insurance, Kohler Toyota and Kohler Hyundai, Advantage Emblem and Screen Printing, Comfort Systems of Duluth, Stewart's Bike Sports and Trophies, ABS Auto Solutions, Hoops Brewing, and Arola Architecture Studio.
So we are very thankful for all of our sponsors, very thankful to have our next guest, Tatum Everett of the Vikings Entertainment Network, is back with us. She's been with us a couple times in person at Vikings training camp. The first time we met her was actually at Vikings training camp about a year ago. Said, hey, would you like my number? We could do shows again. That's something I do not say no to with a great football mind like Tatum. And she's done the show several times since. And, of course, we love to talk LSU with her as well. So my first question as we say good morning to Tatum is, I don't normally go third person on myself, but Tatum, are you happy to talk to Brian Prudhomme instead of Brian Kelly right now? And good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Yeah, wasn't a great showing, but LSU's actually lost their last 5 season openers, so it was par for the course, I guess you could say. As an LSU fan, color me not surprised.
Boy, that's tough when the expectation is we're going to be 0-1.
Yeah, it's not great, is it, guys? But if you're going to lose in the college football season, at least you lose in the beginning.
Yep.
Well, and that is one of the fundamental differences, I think, between the college season and the NFL season. Now, granted, the NFL season is plenty long, and, teams like Green Bay, who started 0-1 last night, proved to us last year you can turn it around at any point. But if you spin it to our Vikings and you look at that schedule, tomorrow is pretty important, even though there's going to be 16 left after tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, I think, you don't want to call it a must-win situation, but it's definitely high up there because you're just dealing with such a gauntlet of a beginning schedule. And we saw how behind the 8 ball they got last year. But I think a lot of that had to do with the turnovers and the drop passes and things that you could see that the offense just didn't click just yet. So I'm hoping that ball security is going to be a really big point of emphasis in this Giants game, as well as just establishing the run early on and starting fast.
I think that's fairly true because as much as this team is different on paper than a year ago, Dave, if you think back to last year, opening drives were successful until we got down around the goal line. Then ball security failed us.
Yeah, it's crazy. Did you see our head coach's record when we win the turnover battle versus when we lose it?
And I would love to see most coaches in that stat department.
If I remember right, I read on The Athletic the other day that he's undefeated if they have turnover advantage. And so last year when we're talking about the awful season, turnovers are right at the heart and soul of that.
That'll be interesting because every coach will tell you that's key, but apparently with Kevin O'Connell so far, that's been the key. Speaking of keys, Tatum Everett, when you look at Sam Darnold, he's got the keys now to this offensive car, and really no reason. I know Nick Mullins is a fine backup quarterback, but in my mind, no reason to be looking over his shoulder. With the J.J. McCarthy injury, this is Sam Darnold's team. Do you get the vibe that these guys are rallying around him already?
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. Aaron Jones in the locker room this week called him the comeback player of the year. They have full faith in Sam and what he's able to do. This coaching staff has a lot of faith in Sam. I actually sat down with him this week for our Game Day Live interview. So if you get to watch Vikings Game Day Live, courtesy of Fox 9, or if you go to our website, Vikings.com or the Vikings app, that story will be up there very soon. I got to sit down and talk to him about going into this game, his mindset, his journey in the NFL. And I think that, he learned from the past and he doesn't dwell on it. He knows that he could have been better in a lot of places, but he is ready for this offense. He was in a similar style West Coast offense last year in San Francisco, so he kind of knew that going in. And he feels like that West Coast style of offense plays right into his strength. He knows that, if he just is a point guard out there and he just hits the open guy, that'll make, it sounds easy, he said. That's really all I got to do out there. I'm not trying to put everything on my shoulders anymore.
I think when you keep it simple like that, you can have success. You mentioned Aaron Jones, and everybody in Vikings country is pretty high on Aaron Jones, even though obviously he didn't play in the preseason. As PA put it yesterday, hasn't had a carry yet wearing the colors. But with a situation like yours with Vikings Entertainment Network and the personality that Aaron Jones seems to bring, what's he like? Because it just seems like a bundle of energy.
Oh, bundle of energy, nicest guy, just always in a good mood. He just brings a whole lot of fun and just optimism and talent and knowledge. And I think just his knowledge of the NFC North and being like the bell cow in this, bell cow, the one I didn't get on initials, the bell cow,
right,
running back room, I think is going to be really exciting times to see for sure.
I think it will be too. And talk about exciting times for you, because again, we're speaking with Tatum Everett of the Vikings Entertainment Network. Obviously, the Vikings open the season tomorrow at noon in New York against the Giants. What's this week like for you? Because we could talk about what prep is like for coaches, how players are taking care of their bodies and traveling. Your role is kind of all over the place every day of the week. What's this week been like for you?
Yeah, it's been pretty hectic. I mean, we had a lot of shoots going on. We have Vikings Weekly is back, so we have a 30-minute long magazine-style show where we feature all of our content. It's kind of like a one-stop shop for everything you need to know going into the Vikings game. And so we did that. We have a couple of social pieces that I do. A lot of it is prepping and coordinating. It's like boring stuff, actually, sometimes, like just making sure everyone's where they need to be for what we need to put out for our fans, right? So it's a lot of prepping and doing that. I'm currently packing up my bag right now, heading to the facility because we will leave here shortly for New York. And then it's game time tomorrow. So it's exciting to say. But, yeah, it gets a little more hectic in the regular season, that's for sure.
No question about it. So I'm going to go the opposite of boring, and let's talk about the NFL games that already took place on Thursday and Friday. I know you said you had a hectic week. How much of Chiefs, Ravens, and Packers, Eagles did you get a chance to watch? Because I said earlier in the show, if you're not a football fan already and you decided, all right, this year I'm going to sit down and try to be, the first two games gave you a pretty good introduction to the sport.
For sure. Admittedly, I did not watch last night. I had plans. I had a friend's birthday, so we had it on in the background, but I didn't pay attention the whole time. And the one before, I fell asleep in the fourth quarter, so I'm probably not ready for football. I don't know. I don't know what my deal is. I think I'm exhausted from this week, but I definitely loved watching the Chiefs-Ravens game. To me, that was just insane. I've been on the Isaiah Likely train for quite some time, drafted in a couple of leagues and stuff. Finally feel like that's paying off, even though this year I didn't draft him at all. So I feel like, that's on me. But yeah, it's good to see that because I'm a huge Mark Andrews stan. I usually put him on a few of my teams as much as possible, but kind of feel like the torch was passed the other night.
I do too, and ironically, I'm in one more league. I think I'm playing in 5 or 6 this year, which is way too many, by the way. But I'm in one league that's actually drafting now. My partner's there while I'm on the radio. I think it's weird that they draft after the season started, but we were discussing a likely scenario this morning as well. I have to ask you this, though. With fantasy football and with having talked about Aaron Jones, he mentioned that he's actually told fantasy owners, he just made kind of a broad statement that if you got me this year, you're going to be happy about it. When you play fantasy football and you have somewhat intimate conversations with players, how much do they think about that kind of stuff?
I really don't think they think too much about it. I mean, he was definitely asked straight up about fantasy, so I don't really think like they think about that. And they can't. Like that's not why they play the game, to get you to win your fantasy.
If only they did, though, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, but I do think that he makes a great point because I do think that, he is great catching passes out of the backfield. And I think that's something that Ty Chandler's been working on. So I think that Aaron will see a lot of those checkdowns, those design plays where he's going to be open and be the pass catcher. So I think, like, obviously, when you're drafting your running backs and you're trying to think of like what you need, it's always good to have a good pass catching running back in those PPR leagues because you're getting those points through the air as well. So I don't think he's wrong in saying that, but whatsoever.
So you get, if you're asking questions about, from coaches or things about players that they interact with, you get different answers based on their specialty, right? So the defensive line coach will probably talk about a defensive lineman. My question is, now your role is unique. So when you are dealing, which players, sorry, I've got I've got allergies going on like crazy.
Oh, you're fine.
So when you're dealing with players, and you have to do that as part of your job, which players are you most looking forward to talking to, and which players are, well, I don't want the name for the second part. So let's just go with, which players do you most look forward to dealing with?
Yeah, I think it's really easy, now that I've been with the team for 3 seasons, this will be my 4th, to really lean on the guys that I've known now for that long. The Cam Bynums, the Harrison Phillips, Harrison Smiths, some of the O-line, Brian O'Neill, Garrett Bradbury. Like, there are just guys that you just like innately gravitate towards because you have these relationships built up over time. So those are kind of the ones that are easy, but it's also, like you said, like a very new team, so a lot of new faces, and it's fun to get to see how that all comes together. JJ McCarthy couldn't be more awesome to have a conversation with, and I just think that it's just a good group of guys. They have a lot of fun, and they seem really close. The chemistry really feels like it's there.
Talking with Tatum Everett of the Vikings Entertainment Network. Tatum, I'm always thrilled when you're able to do this with us. And part of the reason I am is because I like learning more about your role. Dave Cook just said your role is a little bit different. I know that there are young people out there listening that say, I want a role like that. I want a career like that someday.
For sure.
Instead of talking about, the route and journey to take to have such a career, walk us through what game day will be like. You mentioned you're leaving for New York shortly, so you'll be there tomorrow. Tomorrow, your day looks like what?
We'll get up bright and early, head to the stadium a couple hours ahead of time. I'll set myself up at the press box. I'm usually in the press box or in the radio room this year, where PA does his broadcast. And I'll kind of mosey on down to the field for my Fox 9 Game Day Live hit. So I'll have a hit in the morning where I intro my Sam Darnold story. Whenever there's noon games, we try and get on that show because they're live from there anyway. And then I'll watch the game, take my notes, pay attention closely to like the trends and the talking points. And from there, I go down to the field and do Between the Lines with Ben Lieber, which is basically like a recap style Q&A with Ben, because he's obviously on the sidelines looking at everything up close and personal. So That's just kind of it. Like, it's a lot of like knowing what's going on and making decisions on what you want to do for the next week based off of who had a great game and things like that.
So we do some things here with football coverage, but ours is at the prep and college level, so it's obviously very different in terms of level of play and in terms of the way you conduct yourself in some cases, because a lot of times, say with prep games, somebody wins, somebody loses. Dave and I have a tendency to talk to the winning coach or a player from a winning team afterwards. Well, when you're working for the Vikings, you don't always get that option. You're talking to the Vikings, win or lose. How difficult is it when you know somebody's gone through a gut-wrenching, crushing defeat, and you've got to talk to them right away? How difficult is that?
Yeah, it's not great. It's from my perspective, it's been better being in the team and knowing these players a lot better. When I was in the media, I was like, gosh, I really hate them having to like stick my camera in their face and like talk to them immediately about like the loss or whatever. But like, it's part of the job, and I think that they understand that. Most players are super respectful of that because at the end of the day, like, this is their job. They know they have to answer to the fans, to the media. They have to sit there and say stuff. So, they know it's their job. They know they're very respectful. I mean, it's not easy, but you do have to ask the questions that you ask,
I do know, and I want to ask you this question. I'm going to ask one that we asked PA last week when he was on in this very time slot with us. I'm a play-by-play guy. He's a play-by-play guy, so I had to ask, we get to go a lot of places to cover games. What's a trip you're looking forward to most? And it was funny because he started his answer with, well, we've been to London a lot, and I'm kind of Londoned out. And then he went on to say why he was looking forward to London this year. When you look at the trips you're going to take, what have you circled and why?
Yeah, I'm going on 4 trips this year. So there's I'm not going to all of them, which will be new for me. And I think the ones that I'm most looking forward to, there's 2 besides this one. I guess I'm really stoked about this one too. But I'm really looking forward to London. We'll be out there a week early to bring you guys as much preview content from London as possible, which will be super fun. Just being immersed in a different culture is just, I love it. I love it over there. I think it's just a really fun time to see football fans from NFL fans from another country. It's just cool. It really is. I'm looking forward to that one, and I'm looking forward to Nashville. I covered the Titans for 3 years when I worked in Nashville, and I love it. I love Nashville. So it was just personal reasons. I just want to go back and see my friends and go back to the stadium and see all of the Titans personnel that I'd, worked alongside and things like that. So those are the two I think I'm most looking forward to.
Well, here's a quick question based on that then. We've been actually talking about this a little bit with the Brazil game last night and whatnot. Do you think it's too far in the future where, some of these out-of-country towns are actually in the NFL, a team in London, a team in Mexico City? Do you think that's actually a thing that could happen relatively soon?
Yeah, I mean, I really don't know. I don't really have a ton of insight on that. I do think that it's an interesting situation and would definitely bring its own challenges. But if we're looking to expand the game, I guess that's kind of what you would eventually want to do. And I mean, if there are teams that either relocate or brand new teams form out there, I guess it's just a growing the sport worldwide, which is a really important thing, I think, for the NFL in general. So, I don't really know if that's possible, but hey, if they go to London, I'll go work over there. That's fine.
I was going to say, there's a willingness that you and I might share. Tatum, I'm going to close with a couple of questions that might sound a little bit like gambling, but obviously working for an NFL team, I'm not going to drag you down that road. But I'll start with this. Tonight, LSU versus Nicholls State. LSU is favored currently by 46.5. That's huge. Do they cover?
Do they cover? Yes, they cover. I think that they're going to bounce back. I mean, I don't think they played badly against USC, and I think you can see that the offense has a lot of weapons. John Emery coming back as in the backfield is awesome, adding like a little bit of life there. And I think they cover. Nicholls State, I used to sideline report for when I was working in Louisiana, and
that's
I
the
know
Raging
the
Cajuns, correct?
well.
Is that the Raging Cajuns?
No, they're the Colonels, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, Raging Cajuns are Lafayette, Lafayette, Louisiana Lafayette. So,
all right. I got my Bayou confused. I apologize.
No, you're good. They are an FCS team. It's what you would call the cupcake version of a squad going out there. It's really, you're dealing with someone from the Southland Conference. If they're still in that, I'm pretty sure they are.
They are.
Yeah, so I wouldn't go, they're not like playing a USC team this week by any means. So I think they cover for sure.
All right, and then my last bit of who would you favor here, those still standing in the initials game tournament. I know you had a tough draw and your run is over, but it was fun to follow.
I tried to figure out who won yesterday, and I couldn't figure it out last night. I didn't listen to it.
I believe Grimm won yesterday. I believe that's the case. I caught the tail end, and I think Grimm won yesterday. But they've still got the big one, Tyler George, Zach, and I think Tom Pelissero might be in next week's. There's still a lot of good people left.
Tom is a sneaky pick.
Right. Who are you going with? AJ's been the GOAT. Who are you going with?
Yeah,
Tyler George will be the
AJ. I know people are, bad guy AJ, but AJ's a really nice guy when he's not playing initials. And I have played against him twice now and have seen him, outside of the game, and I'm pulling for AJ. I think he redeemed himself from last year's loss.
I can appreciate that, but as a Duluth guy, and this guy's a friend of mine, off the ice, off the air, off just about everything, he's better at initials and he's better at curling than he is at ping pong. But I got to go with Tyler George. I got to go with the Duluth guy and hope he wins it. But I appreciate talking to you. Have safe travel. Have a wonderful trip. Let's start the year 1-0, and let's talk again soon.
Thank you. Sounds good, Brian. Appreciate you guys. Nice to hear from you.
Absolutely. You as well. Your ability to do quality radio and pack your bags was multitasking at its finest. We appreciate everything. You did a wonderful job.
I'm so sorry.
No, you did great.
Never apologize to me. We're very thankful to have you. Safe travels. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you. Sounds good. Have a good one.
Absolutely. I love her. Tatum Everett. The energy is unmatched.
Yeah, and you can just hear the passion in her voice for what she does. She's so much fun to talk to.
Absolutely. She loves the Bayou, so we talked a little bit about that. Speaking of buy, let's play buy or sell next. We'll be right back. A little Beastie Boys with Sure Shot. Welcome back to the Northland Sports Page. Brian Prudhomme and Dave Cook. Dave Cook, we were talking during that break there that this show has just been fun. I know it is every week, but the energy that John Trebish brought, the energy that Dave Hoops always brings, and then just the passion you talked about that Tatum Everett brings. You can hear it in her voice, even if she's apologetic for packing at the same time. We knew because there was noise, but there was no difference in quality. She's wonderful.
No, and she, like you said, she's so passionate about what she does. So we don't just get Viking-centric with her.
Right.
Right? We hear about all the different things in the league that she gets to do, which none of us, you, me, our listeners, really know anything about. So the passion that she brings to the game, but for a different side of the game, is a lot of fun to talk about.
100% correct. So we're buying everything that she's selling. It's been fun. We want you to buy everything our sponsors are selling. Dave Cook will tell you more about them.
Yeah, we'll start with ABS Auto Solutions. It's getting to be winter, Brian. Now's the time to get that car undercoated and get ready to go. And that's, like I was telling you, that's why I told Aaron, you got to bring it in and have it looked at.
And mention, you heard it here, you'll get an additional discount as well. So mention the Northland Sports page.
Stewart's Bike Sports and Trophies, Comfort Systems of Duluth, Kohler Toyota and Kohler Hyundai, Mike Regan at Christensen Group Insurance, Assisted Living Locators. You can reach them at www.assistedlivinglocators.org/Duluth. Kraus Heating and Cooling, your carrier, HVAC authorized dealer. Mount Royal Bottle Shop, Ferguson Bath and Kitchen, the Blackwoods Group, including their locations on London Road, Tavern on the Hill, in Two Harbors, and in Proctor. Arola Architecture Studio, and Hoops Brewing.
So 1,000 times thank you to all of them. Arola Architecture Studio, of course, is the OG, and he'll bring you Drawing Lines as the final segment. That'll be Vencie Glenn once again. Should be fun with Vencie again. It always is, but Vikes Giants, two of his former teams.
That'll be a blast. I want to ask him a question about leadership when it comes to the business world and whatnot. We talked a little bit about it over the week, Vencie and I, so I'm looking forward to bringing that to the show as well.
That will be fun. But first, we're going to play Buy or Sell. If you're new to the show and new to this game, here's how it works. I'm going to give a statement for each of the four major leagues, NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB. If Dave agrees with my statement, he's going to say buy, and he's going to tell me why. If he disagrees, he's going to say sell, and he's going to tell me why. Dave has a couple of responsibilities, his wonderful takes as always, but of course the order in which we play as well.
Yes, and we're going to start with Major League Baseball.
All right, so Major League Baseball. Currently, the Twins are in a playoff spot. We covered last week that we believe, or at least hope, that they're going to stay there. But this team, as Nick Nelson of Twins Daily, who's been on this show several times, put it yesterday, this team is not without warts in any way. So buy or sell this. Your biggest concern down the stretch here for the Twins continues to be pitching.
I'm going to sell. I think the concern right now is getting your shortstop back.
I don't think you're going to, is
my
problem.
I don't either, but I think that's the biggest concern. Like the shortstop, the center fielder has been dinged up again. Putting your best player at second when he comes out publicly and says, don't put me at second. But by addition, by subtraction, Kepler's done for the year, and we're going to get to see some players who might have a little more passion on the ball field and produce a little better.
I agree with you. I'm going to sell. Now, pitching is obviously a concern because the Twins proved me very wrong last week. If you remember last week, I said the Twins will be in the playoffs, and I still believe that part. But I said because they're just not getting blown out. They're in every game. And then Zebby went out and got shelled. He was better last night, but still not great. Pitching is a concern, but it's not my primary one. My main concern is part of what you said with the health, but I'm just convinced the cavalry's not coming. I'll say it again. I don't think we'll see Correa. I'll be pleasantly surprised if we do. What version do we get? At this point, not to be rude, but I don't care if we see Byron Buxton anymore. Enough is enough. And otherwise, Joe Ryan's not coming back. I'm not sure if it matters if Chris Paddock comes back. So you're going to have to win with who you have, which is why I'll tip the cap again to Rocco as much as people love to destroy him. If you look at during the latter innings of the win over Tampa Bay on Thursday, it was Austin Martin, the new prospect in center, and Matt Wallner in right, Brooks Lee at short, and you're going, this is a futures game. No, this is this year down the stretch.
Yeah, the St. Paul manager is calling Rocco to give him some advice on his lineup.
But because of some of this, my biggest concern actually is the way that they field the baseball. There used to be the Twins way, and it was kind of an annoying way of saying we don't have any power, so we beat you with, slap hitting and good defense. Well, good defense is always going to help you out. Brooks Lee right now doesn't look comfortable playing shortstop. You already said Royce Lewis has basically said he doesn't want to play second base. I don't know who you're going to put at third, if it's Miranda or if it's Royce, if he's not playing second. The one you trust is Carlos Santana over at first base, so I don't know if he can save all the rest of that. I don't know what kind of outfield range you have when you don't have Buxton. So it all ties together, but I'm just afraid if our pitching isn't going to be something that can be relied upon, you can't be giving extra outs either.
Well, Kingsley, the replacement outfielder they brought in, prospect, he's 27.
Right.
Like he figured out hitting. Like he's always been fast. He's always had a great glove, but his on-base percentage has always been like in the low threes.
Can't steal first.
Right. And so now that he's getting on base a little more, he could be a guy to supplant Buxton for a year or so while they transition to whoever's next.
All right, so hopefully the Twins are right where they are right now at the end of this month, and that's in a playoff spot, whether it's a first wild card, second wild card, or the last one. I do believe, even though they've got a 4-gamer with Cleveland coming up, I do believe that the division as a dream is gone.
Yeah, no, I think you're right there. Again, in order for them to make a gigantic run, somebody's going to have to get hot.
Right.
And I just don't see anybody who can do that. I mean, Willie Castro hasn't been good for the last month, and he's been kind of the guy carrying them through all the bumps and bruises.
Well, and when you're a role player for your career and suddenly relied upon to be the guy every night, it changes.
It certainly does.
You never asked Pedro Munoz to be Kirby Puckett, and I feel like that's what we're doing.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I agree. Well, let's flick on over to the NHL.
All right, so the NHL. You and I both use the Score app with regularity. In fact, kudos to you for introducing me to that years ago because it's now become a bit of my sports Bible, if you will. Read an article on the Score with the NHL previews this week because training camp is right around the proverbial corner. They broke the NHL up into tiers, and the tier that the Wild fell in was competitive, but not enough for a playoff berth. Buy or sell that that's true?
True. I'm buying. They have too much old talent, wisdom, to bottom drop, right? But they don't have enough younger talent to reach the playoffs. Your goaltender is a Hall of Famer, nice guy, first ballot in the central ring of the Hall of Fame. He's also 40, and those days are long past. You've got all the guys they signed 2 years ago to 3-year guaranteed contracts. You've got all this space being taken up by veterans who are really good 5 years ago. And so they're smart. They're not as physically gifted. I think that leads to 500. And then your kids, which can help get you over that hump, they just don't give them any time because they're full of old guys.
So I'm going to give you a strange caveat. I'm going to sell just to be different because I easily could have said, yep, what you said. I'm going to sell because how many times have I told you, well, this happened because the sports gods don't like me.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with that. So I'm actually going to say that the Wild are going to be competitive and they're going to squeak in the playoffs at the bottom.
Only to get wrecked in the first round.
And here's the thing. I would be happy to have the Minnesota Wild in the playoffs because, as I've said before, even though it would probably better this franchise to bottom out and get a top 5 pick, I can't be the sports fan that sits in front of my television or sits by my radio and says, I'm listening and watching my favorite team. I hope they lose. I can't do that. So here's the thing. The sports gods know that, and they're going to say, well, I'm going to give Brian what he wants. I'm going to give the Wild the chance to be in the playoffs. They're going to do that, and like you said, probably get destroyed in round 1, and they're going to have all this new money next year, but a middling draft pick and not be sure who's going to want to come here and who's not.
I think the one thing that could happen is that at some point during the year, the upper management, maybe it's around the trade deadline, right? The upper management
just cuts bait with all the old guys.
Yep. And then if we're not that far behind, the kids come up, they don't know any better, right?
Then they could bottom out without trying.
Or because they don't know any better,
go on a run.
And that would be fun.
I was going to say, if that happens, that's best case scenario.
Yeah, if it's driven by the kids and it's Ogren and it's Kuznetsov and it's the rest of the guys that are under 32, I think that would be fun.
You know where that happened? That was the Minnesota Twins a year ago.
Yeah, 100%.
Those driving the car, Correa may have been the leader, but the others driving the car to that playoff run, they were not old guys.
No, I agree with you. And depending how good Denver is, we could see Boyum on the roster towards the end of the year too. So, yeah, I think they're not going to do it. I think they could get beaten pretty soundly. But if they're close and the kids start to play, sometimes young guys just don't know any better, and they could run.
Well, and I think part of it, too, even though expectations for the Wild may be lowering, there are certainly teams that are worse off than they are.
Oh, 100%.
And those teams are going to be on the Wild schedule, too.
Yeah.
You're going to beat some of the teams in front of you just because. So we'll see. It might be fun. It might be very Vikings-esque. The expectations could be pretty low. You might shrug your shoulders if they lose, but if they start winning, all right, this is kind of fun.
Yeah, and I want them to be fun to watch.
Yeah.
I don't want them to be miserable.
It hasn't been for a couple years for me.
I don't want them to be miserable.
Right.
Because I want to watch them, and I won't watch miserable.
Well, we're too busy in the winter anyway.
All right, National Basketball Association.
All right, NBA. Talk to Tatum a little bit about odds and spreads and things of that nature. NBA is right around the corner, too. So there was another article that I read this week. It wasn't Popular Mechanics, for those of you that were listening in hour number 1. But the over-under on Timberwolves wins this upcoming season was set at 52. Ooh. Buy or sell, that's too high.
I'm going to say buy. that that's too high. Now, one of the things is if you were a team that always was in contention, 52 is a lot of wins, but not ridiculous. But for a Timberwolves fan, that's like 50, like in 2 years, 52, or in 1 year.
Kurt Rambis' entire career?
Yeah, right. So
times two?
I think that they have the talent to do it. I think that if their young kids take the steps that they should, and that includes Anthony Edwards, they certainly have the horsepower to do it. I just, when you've had such a horseshoe in the pocket postseason, sometimes you get a little ahead of yourself. So 52 seems high.
So I'm going to sell that it's high. I just think they're going to go off. I think it's going to be fun.
That would be so much fun.
I'm not a fan of run-it-back theories. I look at the 2010 Vikings, I look at the 2011 Twins, and I go, yeah, you thought you had all the pieces in place, and it was an embarrassment. But we just talked about the age of your key players. On those two teams in Vikings country and in Twins territory, old guys trying to lead the charge. That is not the case at all with the Minnesota Timberwolves. If you want to say old, you can put Mike Conley in that sentence. You could drag Rudy Gobert there. Really nobody else. And I just think these young guys, they have that fire, they have that competitive edge, and they just know what it takes, and they are that good. Even though they didn't add much because financially they couldn't, rumor is they hit in the draft. If they truly did, it's a really good basketball team. And 52 sounds high, but that's 52 and 30.
Right. I can see
them losing less than 30 games.
Yeah, I agree. If what you said is they learned something from the playoffs and how to be a great team, then all bets are off. That's the thing is that if they learned from that how to be better, then absolutely. If they just said, "Wow, look how good we are," that's when I'm like, okay, 48 sounds good.
And can Joe Ingles be the sharpshooter that guards no one but be someone that they need?
Yeah.
I mean, we say they added nearly nobody. He's the nearly.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is the two rookies. The one point guard is younger, but they don't need a point guard right this second, right? But the kid from Illinois, he could jump right in and play.
Can I give you a weird one? They keep bringing Luka Garza back for a reason. Is he a factor this coming season?
Never a better example of you keep working, get your body right, get your game right, and then you can play in the NBA than Luka Garza.
Right.
When he came in, it was like that guy has no chance, but he's turned himself around.
It's not just Caitlin Clark when it comes to Iowa basketball, right?
Right, 100%.
We're hoping that anyway.
Yeah.
By the way, closed circuit to Caitlin Clark fans. She lost to the Minnesota Lynx last night. Is it okay to be happy that she played well, but her team lost because I'm a Lynx fan?
Yes, it is.
Some people looked at me like, what do you mean? How can you cheer against Caitlin Clark's team? Easy. She's playing my favorite one.
Yep. I can respect and cheer against.
Those of you that have liked the WNBA for 5 minutes now, thanks to Caitlin Clark, might want to put some respect on the name of the best franchise in the sport.
Yeah. And before you say best ever, check Maya Moore. Like when Maya Moore played, we won.
Right.
It's that simple.
It was that simple.
All right, so let's finish off with the National Football League.
All right, so the Sam Darnold era is about to begin. New era there. A couple years back, Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi came in. New era there. Lots of publicity for the old era recently with the Mike Zimmer interview and everything that's been said about it since. Buy or sell that Mike Zimmer's legacy in Minnesota is now tarnished forever with this latest article and some of the backlash articles to follow.
So I think this is a buy. I think we also need to understand how good we were when he was here. So we can't lose track of probably third best coach in franchise history. But you're right.
Just so you know, we're going Bud, Denny, Zim.
And then but once you say.
And then Burnsy's right on the cusp.
The guy we got now is on the cusp too.
He's got to win a little bit more than that.
He does, but he's heading in the right direction.
Right.
Anyway, so what we got third best coach of all time, made a complete fool of himself in an interview 3 years later, fourth best is right? So we have to say, yes, he was very, very good for us, and what in the world was that? But the what in the world was that shouldn't take shine off his effectiveness as a Vikings head coach.
So you're buying that the legacy is tarnished just because of the way people think, but the way he coached it shouldn't be?
Correct. That is 100% what I think.
All right. So I'm going to sell that his legacy is tarnished, and here's why. This didn't tarnish anything. I think it confirmed what we all thought. That everybody talked about, boy, the culture by the end was really, really brutal. And this guy is really about himself and kind of the definition of a get off my lawn guy. And when you're around certain people of a certain age, that personality just doesn't work. And as much as I don't normally agree with people like Jim Souhan anymore, Souhan basically said this proves that he's petty. 1,000% it does.
Yep.
But to me, it only tarnishes a legacy if you read something that you go, I'm sorry, what? All of this that you read, you went, yeah, that tracks. The only thing that didn't to me is that he owned a horse with PA and had a problem with PA and bought him out. Everybody on the mothership has said, if you got a problem with PA, that sounds like a you problem.
Yeah, that's right. But look at some of the call-outs, right? He called out Chris Boyd.
Right. But I mean,
right?
it just confirms that he's not Wayne Fonts was the ultimate player's coach. Mike Zimmer was the exact opposite.
But this had nothing to do with his play. That's the thing. When Chris Boyd said, yeah, it was tough there for a while, and Zim went after Boyd, and then it was like Eric Kendricks was the one who said hostile environment, but he came back on one knee and Zim brought him back, right? It's the fact that he went after individuals makes it different for me. Like if it would have been about Rick Spielman and bad drafts and all that stuff, that would have been fun to listen to. But when he started going after like Chris Boyd, who played like 16 defensive snaps, whatever, Zim.
And he said he had more special teams penalties than everybody he remembers. And I agree with all that. But again, for me, it just confirms what I thought by the end. I didn't think in the beginning. I thought we had the guy.
Yep.
But by the end, it just didn't seem like he liked a lot of people not named Mike Zimmer. And certainly there are people that as they get older, they wear being rude like a badge of honor. And it seemed like Mike Zimmer did that at the end.
The reason that he didn't get an NFL coaching job before then is that I think people saw this coming down the road.
Well, and if I needed one more reason, not necessarily to want the Dallas Cowboys to be successful, here we are.
There it is.
Can't buy me love. That's buy or sell. Are you worried yet about Jordan Love? We'll talk to Vencie Glenn when we come back. That's Arola Architecture Studios Drawing Line segment. It closes the Northland Sports Page. We'll be right back. Lots of friends of mine here. Brian Prudhomme, Dave Cook. We are the Northland Sports Page. Final segment is Drawing Lines, courtesy of Arola Architecture Studio. And, of course, that's the safety dance, which means it's time for our favorite safety, Mr. Vencie Glenn.
It is. Did I tell you that I found all 45 of the safety dance the other day at the house?
Did you?
Yep. Still in the sleeve, in the yellow safety dance sleeve.
I was going to say, on the album cover, had it been an album, would the men be wearing hats or would they be men without hats?
No, they were without hats.
Okay, perfect.
So, I would think that would be the best way to do it if your name is Men's Without Hats.
Well, the best way to do anything football is to talk to Vencie Glenn. We're going to do that right now. 2-5, good morning. Happy Saturday.
Oh, good morning, guys. Happy Saturday.
Good to talk to you. Always a fun Saturday when it's the eve of the opener. I always say, take me through a player's mind. Butterflies already or butterflies tomorrow when you're looking at an opener on the horizon?
All butterflies all week. You're excited. It's opening day. You want to show, what you've been working hard for all off season. You're anxious to get started and see what's happening. This is what it's all about. You worked hard all off season to get to this moment, and it's a big moment for everybody, whether you're a rookie or a 15-year guy.
So, Vencie, one of the questions I had for you was about Malik Neighbors and asking a retired jersey to come out of retirement and use that as a rookie. Is there a little bit of hubris in that, or are you thinking, well, Malik wants a number, go ahead and get it?
Malik is all about Malik. He's not even really thinking about the big picture. Here, the game is always going to be better, bigger, and better than individuals. And when you're sitting there, you want a retired jersey to come out for your own personal gain and satisfaction and attention. It's just going to bring attention to him. He wants attention. That just shows you who he is. So I'll just keep the conversation going and leave it at that.
I can appreciate that because Malik Neighbors will get a lot of attention from opposing secondaries. And, of course, the first opponent is going to be our secondary. Last week I talked to you about the experience suddenly that's in that Vikings defensive backfield because of the new acquisitions. That's a positive that I lean on as a Vikings fan. Those that aren't say, well, experience corners, that also means that they're old. What side do you fall on? When somebody's got experience, how long until father time catches up and how much of the game is cerebral versus physical?
I don't put all my onus on the individual. I put my onus on the schematic and the team concept. I'm a team guy. There are a lot of guys with individual talents out there, but if you're not working within the team chemistry and concept, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Tom Brady has shown the world that if you work with different guys, and he's won Super Bowls with different guys, different systems, you can win. So when you start talking about individuals, it's like, no, it's the system. If one guy off D-line doesn't do his job and he bursts up the middle for 25 for a touchdown, you're not going to blame the secondary, or if a guy runs around in the backfield for 7-8 seconds looking for a receiver and he throws it and he's open for a touchdown, you can't really blame the secondary because they're trying to cover a guy that's great. So it's a conceptual thing in my mind. That's the way I look at it, but everybody looks at it different. That's why we play the game.
Vincey, you and I last week after the show had a chance to talk about a number of things, but one of the things we talked about was leadership. And then this week you hear Mike Zimmer come out and lay waste to some of his past players, and you look at that and you say, well, I'm not sure that's leadership. I'm wondering, in life and in football, what do you think? So we're going to have people listening that don't know the answer to this. When you see something, do you say, when you see somebody and say that's a leader, what kind of things are you looking for?
It's I don't think leaders. I mean, when you select a leader or you decide to follow someone that exemplifies some of the things that you do, and you're not in a position to be that same kind of guy, I think you're attached to that. That's just like being around good people. But leaders are chosen. You know, leaders never, guys that self-claim that they're the leader of the team and all that, those are the attention getters. They're not the leaders. The leaders are the guys that don't say much, other than the quarterback, who's, obviously the chosen leader. But they're guys in the locker room. It might be the left guard, and he's doing the most tremendous stuff outside of football, on the field. He's a quiet guy and all that kind of stuff, and you say he's a leader. Jason Kelsey is a prime example. You know, somebody like that, a center. Man, that's the kind of guy but they're not the kind of guys you talk about. In sports, we only want to talk about the guys that are action guys.
Yeah.
You don't, when you talk about leadership, you don't really look for the guys that are behind the scene guys, and those are the guys that make the team wholesome, or the behind the scene guys.
You know what's interesting about that, Brian, is that one of the schools that I go to, the leader of the school isn't the principal, it's not the superintendent, it is the librarian. 100%. If you want to know what's going on or what's coming, who's taking care of the kids, it's the librarian. That's been an interesting thing to see.
That would literally be the quiet leader, because they're going to tell you you're supposed to be quiet while you lead as a librarian. Vencie, speaking of leadership, what about the leadership in the NFL as they're into growing the game? We've had games in London for several years, Mexico City, and now last night, Brazil. You're in a different era in terms of your playing career. Are we going too far, or is this fun to see all the places the game has gone?
Oh, I like seeing, because I was part of that. I was one of the first teams that went overseas in 91. I was with the Saints, and we went to Tokyo. Then I went back to Tokyo again later and then I went to Germany as well. So I love it. I love it, putting NFL games in different countries and things like that. I have no problem against it.
I like that as well. So that's obviously a long road trip for the teams that take them. Speaking of road trips, first game of the year for the Vikings is a road game, obviously visiting New York tomorrow. Home openers are always fun because the fans are going to be behind you. It's going to be hyped. The atmosphere is going to be pro your team. But coaches always talk about we develop camaraderie, we develop closeness by traveling together because it's just us. Is there an advantage to game one actually being on the road, even though on the surface that sounds crazy?
There's no advantage or disadvantage. The advantage is who's playing the best on the field, and that's what it boils down to. You know, it's great to play at home all the time, absolutely. It's a disadvantage, I think, to play at somebody else's stadium because you don't have your fans there or as many fans there. So, yes, there's in that regard, yes. But when you're on the field, it's all about matchups and chemistry and schemes, schematics. So if you focus on that, football is still football. It's in between the lines, and that's where it's played. So I think the teams that can travel well are the teams that usually end up doing well and playing well in the playoffs.
In between the lines is a perfect way to put it, as this is Drawing Lines with Vencie Glenn, courtesy of Arola Architecture Studio. Final segment and final question for you, Dave Cook.
Yeah, Vencie, speaking of matchups, you've got the rookie receiver from the Giants who's getting, like we said, a lot of attention and trying to draw a lot of attention. But now somebody's going to pick him up. When you're as a secondary, are you looking at a young player who's very free talking about himself and how good he is? Are you setting somebody up one-on-one, or are you playing him as a team, as a secondary? And if so, how do you balance coverage with the other guys?
I'm going to let you and Brian answer that question for yourselves and all the other Viking fans out there. He's no different than when Justin Jefferson came in the league. The same way you looked at Justin Jefferson coming in the league, that's the same way you got to look at him.
Perfect.
He's a great athlete. So that's how you look at Justin Jefferson. He was in that same spot a few years ago, and now you see what he's done, and this is no different than what he's doing. So it's a process, and hopefully you would in the right system where you can progress every year and get better. But you can answer that every year by asking, what did you say about your guy when he came in?
Good point.
I'm going to squeak down the rabbit hole of fan ball to close it out. Both the Vikings and the Giants have been predicted, and Vencie, I know how you feel about people making way too many predictions, but both are predicted to be towards the bottom of the league this year. I always ask you for a score, and you go, man, I don't do scores, and then you tell me one anyway. What do you think tomorrow? What are we going to see from these two teams? Because everybody's been predicting all summer. Nobody's seen a game played yet.
These are two different teams that are, these are two teams that are looking for an identity. Nobody knows. They don't even know. So to put up a score and what kind of offense that's why they want to assess themselves tomorrow and find out where they are after week one so they can get better every week. So you really don't know. You can't, because you can go out there 3 plays like last year and lose your starting quarterback, and now it's a whole different conversation all year.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a game to find out where you are and just try to get better from there every week.
100% agree with that. I'll tell you one guy that never lacks an identity and gets better week after week. That is you, my friend. 2-5. Let's do this again next Saturday.
Appreciate you, Vencie.
I appreciate you guys. Be good.
Absolutely. That's our guy, Vencie Glenn. Thank you to Tatum Everett. Thank you to John Trebish. Thank you to Dave Hoops. Thank you always to Vencie Glenn, and thank you always to Dave Cook.
Yeah, we made it, Brian. I wasn't so sure today. It was a good one. Thank you.
We made it through 2 hours. Sometimes I wish we had time for 2 more. Oh, that's right. That debuts tomorrow.
Oh, that's right.
After the Vikings opener, Vikings Giants, after Fan Line. Steve Patosha and I will take your calls on time for 2 more. Steve Patosha, by the way, in for Dave Cook next week. Have a good week out in Colorado.
Thank you, sir. It should be fun.
Have a good weekend, Northland. I'm going to Hoops to try some blueberry wheat. Enjoy yourself. Skol Vikes.